Welcome to the Divine Style podcast, where the journey to self-love and spiritual awakening begins. I'm your host, Gerlinda Stella, a psychic medium, intuitive life coach, and guide on your path to self-discovery. Here we delve deep into the heart of what it means to truly know and love oneself. On today's podcast, we have a wonderful guest joining us. We have Zeo Sheehan, who embarked on a spiritual journey that led him to explore Tibetan Buddhism, Reiki, crystal healing, Akashic Records, and channeling. Zeo's mission is to spread joy by aiding personal growth and transformation through higher consciousness and Akashic Records guidance. Thank you so much for joining us on the Divine Style, Zeo.
Thank you, Gerlinda, for having me.
I do have to do a little disclaimer. I have had a channeling session with you and it was fabulous. I think I was floating for about 2.5 hours afterwards. So thank you so much for that session. I highly recommend people to come and see you from that session.
You're most welcome.
I would love to know about you. When I read through your bio, I realized that you've got such an extensive background in a variety of spiritual practices. But can you tell me a little bit more about your experiences with Tibetan Buddhism? Is that where you started your spiritual journey?
Yes, indeed. It was my introductions in just after my teenage years. And it was kind of unexpected because up until then I was an atheist, really didn't have much to do with anything spiritual. Thought, I might as well give this a try. I don't have anything to lose. And I kind of just slotted in. It all kind of made sense to me to some degree. Since discovered that Buddhism is a very analytical and logical examination of reality, it's a one-track mind kind of religion. It's all focused on motivating you to get to enlightenment, to go beyond the cycle of suffering. And so I think you have to be ready where you go, okay, I'm done with everything. I'm done with enjoying life and exploring different countries. And I'm now ready for the final destination. So it is a very linear perspective so it's not for everyone for sure. But yeah, I think even if they call it an emptiness, I think what they're trying to say is, at the end of the day, we're all one. But it was not that made me feel at home. It was more sort of the going through a visualization or meditation and then just feeling amazing, feeling elevated in terms of my energy. And I went, I want more of that. I'm going back for more.
What are some of the key experiences that you had during that time?
Actually, the first time I experienced, tangibly experienced what a blessing means, or what energy coming from the invisible realms, how beautiful and how uplifting it is. So I think it was really that having that tangible sense after going through, a very ceremonial sort of Buddhist meditation. I went like, wow, this is quite amazing. It's almost like the drugs I used to take.
It is true. I say that to my kids all the time. You don't need drugs, just do meditation. You'll get there.
The other thing it led to was a bit of a disharmony in my family, where my family thought, he's gone, he's subscribed to a sect, so it definitely created some friction there on the family front. For me, it was really an opening and a realization there's so much more to study and so much more to learn in this direction. And I have a natural passion about healing. So I think that really helped me to keep exploring in terms of what is, how can I get better at healing myself and others? So Reiki was the next logical part of the sequence.
One of the things you also mentioned was that you started to idealize some of your mentors.
Yeah, I think, when you meet spiritual teachers and they have way more knowledge and insight and also spiritual connection than you, I think it's just a natural tendency that we put them on a bit of a pedestal and go like, wow, I wish I could get there. I wish I could have that level of connection that they have. I met a really very clear channel who ended up being my teacher for 7 years. And I always went like, wow, that's so amazing. I never even thought that I could get to that level. So it was totally out of the reach of my thinking.
Within those teachings, were they the places that you sort of had that idolization as well?
Yeah, I think especially in the beginning, it was obviously, when you learn about, oh, here's a being that's completely enlightened, and I can feel the blessings coming from that being. Obviously, that's so far beyond my reach. Of course, I'm going to put it on a pedestal. And then you see teachers, they're more connected to the divine or to the spiritual realm. But maybe they're on the halfway pedestal. So I think it's just natural for us as humans to go, man, they're so far out of my reach. Of course, I'm going to place, those teachers and those spiritual beings on a higher level. So it takes a lot of learning and also reflection to recognize that maybe enlightenment is not that far away, or maybe your true nature is, it's always there in the background. So it's kind of my relationship with the divine has changed over the decades.
And when you say it's changed, do you feel like closer, or do you feel it's easier to communicate? What do you mean when you say it's changed?
Well, I feel it's, there's not this sense of going, I'm just a small, insignificant human being. There's more of a sense of equality, of going, yes, I have a personality, I have all my limitations in my personality, but the spiritual energy is really my essence. It's never far away. I can connect it very quickly. So it's kind of leveled the playing field, I guess, a bit, where you don't see yourself as, oh, I'm just a follower. I'm just a small sinner, or I'm a small soul that's trying to find the light. I have to rely on Jesus or Mary or Buddha or whatever, right? It's like, please save me. You're not in that position where you go, I need to be saved, but you're more in a more empowered position of going, okay, the higher self, that's actually me. And I just need to cultivate the connection and make it part of my lifestyle. Yeah, so it's a more relaxed relationship.
That's beautiful, because I guess like what you're saying there is when we do start to do that pedestal thing, then we're making ourselves lesser. And so what are some ways that you would recommend if people do fall into that trap? Because it can be quite an ego trap, isn't it? When we either think from a spiritual perspective, oh, I'm far more advanced than someone, or, oh, I'm not as advanced as this person, which it's easy for that ego to play those games. What would you recommend for people that are in that position, are feeling lesser than, or maybe even feeling superior than?
Well, I think remembering that in spirit, we're all one energetic field, right? So uh, there is no levels on that in that sense. But I think cultivating a very personal connection to spirit, where we connect with the love and with the unconditional love in our own way, I think that's very important. So, whether a person's Christian and they pray to Jesus and then they connect to the unconditional love that way, or you do it directly with your own higher self, it doesn't really matter. But to understand that really love is the essence. And so if your mind is playing games of creating different levels, you're forgetting the most important point, that love is, the core of all the teachings, or the essence of spiritual energy. So in doubt, always remember love's the most important part.
And how do you personally invite love in? What are some practices that you do?
Anything that's self-loving and nurturing. Obviously, you want to have a balance in life. You don't want to just sit there meditating 24 hours or 12 hours a day. So, I learned along the way that balance is really the key. So, what is loving to my body? What is loving to my soul? What's fulfilling in terms of activities or things that match my values? What's loving in terms of, cultivating spiritual connection? So I guess you could say a bit of everything. But I think one of the most important things is to sit and in your reflective or meditative practice to receive, to welcome the love of the spiritual realms. So as I say, whether it's via your higher self or a favorite spiritual being, it doesn't really matter. But actually taking time to receive that, I think it's very, very important, especially these days.
I did talk with a wonderful Kundalini teacher recently, and we were discussing that being open to receive and how difficult it is for people. We're sort of in a world where when we feel like we're taking that then we're selfish.
That's where study and education comes in, to always remember the spiritual beings are very unconditional, right? So even in Buddhism, there's a little verse in there where you say, my I admit my delusions, and therefore I ask for your blessings. But like, it doesn't, even just sitting down and just saying, hey, I'm ready to refuel the tank, that's already sufficient. The angels don't really need any form of guilt tripping or anything like that.
Guilt is a really interesting topic, isn't it? Because it has been used for a long time when you were just talking about the disillusionment that we face, or when we talk about sin being a misstep, not necessarily that we're wrong, it's just that we've made a mistake. So this sort of energy that you're bringing in is similar to that forgiveness and letting go as well.
I think there's a lot of negative conditioning that has sort of woven itself into the various religions. So I don't really subscribe to the guilt principle. I mean, I think there's a lot of truth that it's wise to cultivate virtues. And obviously we want to become, virtues is everything that's good from my perspective. And I think that's very different to feeling, oh, I'm a sinner, or I'm guilty of this, or I'm going to keep focusing on all my weaknesses, or all the things I still haven't healed. So there's a very big difference between those two approaches.
So you bring up a really good point there, because I think sometimes in a healing space, we tend to kind of go on a digging mission to try and find out what's wrong instead of looking at what's going right.
Yeah, I mean, I've absolutely been there, right? Like where you just go for years, you go like, well, we're going to heal. There's more to heal. Oh, there's there's another layer, and here's another pocket. So I think it's just natural on the spiritual path that you get into that phase where you're just obsessed with healing. So we've got to keep clearing and clearing and clearing and clearing. And like, I think it's just one of the phases you will go through. Because and it's not even a bad thing that the ambition of the ego comes in to go, okay, we're going to shake off all the limitations. And I think there's something, it's actually beneficial to some degree. But when it becomes an obsession, it can be problematic. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're all evolving and we're growing. At what points would you say, if somebody has gotten caught up in this sort of thinking that there's something wrong and that they've got to heal and that they've got all these attachments, do you think it naturally will come off, or do you think sometimes they could have been led astray in terms of maybe, like you were mentioning before, about idealizing someone and maybe comparing themselves to someone else?
I guess, like in all industries, there's always sharks out there. And, I think definitely some spiritual teachers may leverage that, where they go, oh, I've got to sell you another level, or I've got to sell you another, you're never going to be finished. And, I think I perceive it more a bit like the rhythms of nature, where there's a bit, how there's a low and a high tide. There's times where you just come back, and where it's wise to celebrate your wholeness, where you go, even though I've got flaws as a personality, uh, deep down in my essence, I'm already whole. And let me focus on that. And then another wave of healing comes, which means unresolved energy. You get triggered. Okay, now it's time to focus on healing. But you're never going to allow the healing to define who you really are. And it's very useful to come back to this realization. What is my true essence? We come back to that philosophical questions. Who am I?
What you've just mentioned there, knowing your essence, is that before you even do any channeling work, it's very important to know who you are.
I personally believe that it's just very good to be flexible in terms of your definition. It's a bit like software upgrades, right? So today I have this sense of who I am as a man, as a soul, as an energetic being, but I have to be flexible and open enough to to upgrade that definition as I go on my spiritual journey. So as long as you're flexible and open, I think you can't really lose. You know, I don't see myself the way I saw myself when I was 20. And I think as long as that flexibility exists, it's all good.
I love that, not getting fixated on that. Yes, that very indoctrinated, this is who I am, but being that flexible self. I think that's amazing. That's really beautiful. One of the things I am really curious to talk to you about is the Akashic Records, because that is something that you do, and you help people with this healing modality. Can you tell me your definition of the Akashic Records and how they can be beneficial for people?
Right. I mean, for me, the Akashic Records is just sort of an energetic field, a library of all information, everything, all information about past, present, future. So it's a bit like the cosmic data bank. When you plug into it, you can use it in all kinds of ways, right? So it depends on what is your intention, what kind of information do you want to extract, what's the purpose of extraction. The most important thing is it's unbiased information, right? It's unbiased information that has a built-in divine intelligence. So if you use it in the proper way, whatever information you get out of it is always going to be beneficial. I mean, obviously you can misuse it.
Can you go into that a little bit? Because I do find it curious, because obviously there's people that are going out there looking for different ways to heal themselves and come across something like the Akashic Records and want to, do healing through that. There are dangers involved if done incorrectly. Like you said, what are some things people can come up against?
The biggest danger is that your own mind or parts of your soul that haven't healed are influencing or tainting the information, right? So especially if you want to extract information where a part of you has an attachment to a certain outcome, or a part of you doesn't actually want to get that information. I've experienced that in my training, that a lot of time the shutters will come down, or the information might just be slightly twisted according to what one part of your soul deems permissible. So, tainted information is probably the biggest risk. And, using the Akashic Records for personal gain is probably not the wisest approach either.
What benefits have you found for your clients that when it is done correctly and it's done safely in the right way with the right intent?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I personally use the Akashic Records for healing. That's kind of my focus. And I can extract, or basically my job is to receive more information about a soul's journey. So if a person learns how to use the Akashic Records, they can figure out more about what happened along the way. What were some really important experiences on my soul's journey that are still influencing me or holding me back today? So my job technically is to figure out, where did a deep limitation originate? What's the dynamic? What's the dynamic? Why does it exist? What's the reason for it to exist? What vows and contracts still remain from that time that are binding? And basically, we're drawing out of the unconscious, making more visible and relatable that which otherwise just keeps repeating itself in terms of energy.
What would you say around things like soulmates, or because obviously when we talk about Akashic Records, people often want to know if they've got history in the past with people like twin flames and things like that. I'd be very curious to know your perspective or view on this.
We've all got experiences in the past with a number of individuals, and I personally believe that there's different levels of twin flames or soulmates or however you want to classify them. Each teacher classifies them slightly different. But I personally believe, since according to Buddha, we've all had thousands of lifetimes. And because there's quite a range of experiences, obviously we can build familiarity, not just with one soul, but with a number of souls. The twin flame is really the soul that we originally, right in the beginning of time of separation, that we sort of separated, we went on our individual journey. I don't get caught up in the definitions or trying to ascertain is this my twin flame or my twin soul, whatever. I just got there's an affinity with this individual, and then sensing, is there some unfinished business? Is there some karma to be resolved? Is there some lessons that we're here to exchange? Or are we even just coming into each other's lives to trigger the hell out of each other?
And sometimes it can be both, can't it? That you can trigger, but it also could be that you're there to work together to potentially raise consciousness.
Totally, totally. I mean, my experience is always the deeper the connection with the soul is, the greater is the capacity for that soul to stir up some really ancient and deeply unresolved energy inside of you. For anyone who's in a twin flame or a twin soul relationship, I congratulate them. It is definitely a journey of mastery for sure.
It is good to give people a disclaimer and sort of say, don't run out and try and find it. It's not necessarily what you want to be doing in this lifetime.
Depending on your intention. If your intention is to heal things rapidly, then go and seek it out. Yes, but if your intention is to have a graceful and harmonious relationship, maybe just be a bit more careful, I guess.
I would also love to know a little bit about your experience with channeling. So this is also something that you offer, and that was the experience that I had with you, where for my own personal experience, you brought through some archangels, and I definitely felt their presence physically. When I do tune into spirit, I can feel it sensory with my body, and I could definitely feel that energy, and it felt like coming home. When you channel, do you feel like channeling anybody can channel? Is this something that anybody can do?
Well, for me, it was a very long-term training. Personally, I feel like I literally studied a university degree in the area of spirituality. I never expected to be able to have this skill. And it was a very gradual progression for me personally, right? With tons of teaching and time and energy invested until something like that opened up inside of me. So first of all, to channel, either you have a predisposition, it's just natural, it's in your family history, or you just know that this is your destiny. It can come from that side, or it can come from the side, like in my case, for just a natural inclination. You're really interested in it and you're happy to do the training. And in many ways, it is a skill where you have to be very conscious of the responsibility that then lies on, that you have to make sure that you're not channeling or transmitting distorted energy. That is a very important responsibility, especially when it comes to clients, right? When channeling for yourself, you can be a bit more relaxed about it, but I take that responsibility very seriously. I did considerable trainings, a considerable amount of training to get my mind in influence and the influence of different parts of my soul to get that out of the room. But I think my commitment is just to be in the channel and to be the messenger.
Really important point that you make there, that there is a lot of ethical considerations that we do need to have as healers and psychics and readers, anyone working in this space, that there is a huge amount of responsibility on us, that we are doing things the right way and for the right reasons to get the best outcome for the people we're working with. If you were able to describe it, what does it feel like for you being in the position of being the channel and having that energy move through you?
I always get an inkling of the core quality of the being. For example, if I'm channeling Mother Mary or Sananda, Jesus, whatever, I get that sense of that profound love. It can be extremely touching. It's definitely uplifting and elevating, and it can also be highly energizing. And it's a bit like putting a finger in the socket, but a much more pleasant current of energy. But it does, it is more current running through your nervous system. So as a channel, you have to pace yourself. You need recovery time because it's just more energy running through the system. And obviously your nervous system is not designed to do that 12 hours a day.
Do you find physically that you do get tired after channeling?
Yeah, I think in my journey, I burnt myself to the ground twice. I learned the hard way what my limit is, what my ultimate capacity is. So now I sort of have a limit of 4 sessions a day, and maybe take a day off every now and again. So yeah, I did test my limits absolutely.
So you're rejuvenating yourself. That's good. That's good. It's all that self-love and looking after ourselves. I remember one time I was because I channel spirit, and uh I remember getting the most terrible headache and talking to another healer and saying, I don't know why I'm getting these headaches. I don't know if it's residue. And she said, did you have water? I was like, oh, that would help. I just hadn't done the basics, just hadn't drunk any water that day. So it is really about looking after ourselves when we are in these healing fields as well, isn't it?
And of course, but I think especially if you're doing healing, right? Especially if you're doing hands-on healing and you're directly connected to intimately connected to the energy field of other people, you have to really be attentive. What do I need physically, energetically to rejuvenate and recharge my batteries? So it's very important.
And if anybody was starting out and wanting to be a channel, or they had that inkling, where do you think that they should start?
Definitely establish a really solid meditation practice to find a rhythm with your own meditations where you're frequently connecting to the light and also to the love of the universe. It's always good to do chakra balancing and bringing light into each one of your chakras. And most importantly, I think, is to pay attention to the balance in your life. So, and what I mean by this is you're not ignoring your physical health. You're not ignoring the base chakra. You're not ignoring the need to be grounded to nature and to anchor your energy into the earth, because the more balanced the energetic system is, the more each chakra is working together with the others, the easier it will be to awaken the channel.
That's
Yeah.
really great tip. That's really, really good. And that practice does go for all modalities, really, doesn't it? It helps you to
Yeah.
connect in and take the time to do that. I think that's the biggest thing I found for people. I think you mentioned both swaying, either going and feeling like you have to meditate 10 hours a day, or the total opposite of sort of like one of those I'll get to it, or trying to think you can do a quick meditation at the sink, um, which can work. But it is that discipline of taking yourself away or into nature and giving yourself that time and the space to connect, isn't it?
I think it's also about pacing yourself, because I get a lot of, obviously on a global level, there's a lot of people go, oh, I just want to open my third eye and see and know everything. And it's important to understand that in the initial stages of the spiritual journey, where if you're bringing light into your chakras and third eye and whatever, a large part of the journey is purification. A large part of the journey is meeting the shadow and the unresolved energies and being patient and diligent in resolving them. So whether that means, feeling heavy energies and emotions as they move out of your system, or discovering deep limitations, purification is an inevitable part, I would say. And you learn along the path, all the various skills or tools and methods that can help you with that. But I don't personally believe that you can avoid it unless there's a natural inclination or you get hit by lightning. It's more rare than not. I guess we just live in an instant society, and they don't realize how multifaceted the soul is and how many facets have old hang-ups and stories with God and the divine, and are pulling in an opposite direction, or you go like, this is not safe to access this information, or do you know what I mean? It's a lot of my training was actually dealing with different facets of my soul to consolidate all kinds of stories and hang-ups and unhealed things that otherwise just create. It's a bit like a refraction rather than having a clear prism. The information just goes through a bit like a diamond, and it refracts, and you only get a small piece of information.
You actually make the whole awakening process sound so beautiful and very poetic, and the way you talk about it, like releasing and talking to the shadow self. And I think sometimes when we go in this, we're so especially the people that I've spoken to, they're afraid that, you know, once they start crying, that they won't stop, that there'll just be this never-ending flood of tears.
Yeah.
And I guess sometimes it does happen for a little while.
Yeah, I mean, you can't deny the intensity. You know, sometimes a release can be really intense and overwhelming. And I've certainly had times when I remember times when the emotion was so strong that I'm just lying flat on the ground for 2 hours and holding on to whatever crystal I can hold on to. So there are intense moments, but we should never forget that everything is this too shall pass. It's never going to last. And sometimes that's the only thought that keeps you sane. It's better you start the journey of unraveling and becoming more conscious and healing and transforming whatever washes up on the shore. It's much wiser to do that than just to keep pushing it under the.
Oh my gosh, I have so enjoyed our chat today. This has been great. Is there anything that you'd like to share?
At the end of the day, the more you connect to your own heart and you take time on a daily basis to just reconnect into your center and into your heart, the more you'll build an intuitive sense of yourself as a soul. Even if your spiritual path is beginning or you're not sure about the spiritual path, coming back to your center and coming back to your heart, it really helps to get a greater sense of who am I beyond the mind, beyond whatever's going on in the head. So I think it's very important. So some people, they go jogging, some people do sports to sort of come back out of the mind, connect more with their soul and their essence. And I think that is really important in these days when so much of our life plays out in the head.
I will pop your website into the show notes so people can find you. So Oracle for channeling, and also they can contact you through zeosheehan.com. It's been a pleasure.
Lovely to be on the podcast. Yeah, thanks for having me.
As we end today's episode of the Divine Style podcast, I extend my deepest gratitude for your presence and openness on this journey of self-love, self-discovery, and spiritual growth. Farewell for now, and may your journey inward bring you the self-love you seek.